warm welcome to you. You're listening to the Music Business Buddy with me, Johnny Amos, podcasting out of Birmingham in England. I'm the author of the book, The Music Business for Music Creators, available in hardback, paperback, ebook format. I'm a music creator with a variety of credits. I'm a consultant, an artist manager, and a senior lecturer in both music creation and music business. Whatever you do, wherever you are, consider yourself welcome to this podcast and to a part of the community around it. I'm here to try and educate and inspire music creators from all over the world in their quest to achieving their goals by gaining a greater understanding of the business of music. Okay, so in this week's episode, I am interviewing Amani Roberts. Amani is an international keynote speaker and global performer. He's also a renowned DJ, entrepreneur, and award-winning professor, and USA Today's best-selling author of The Quiet Storm and his other book, DJs Mean Business. With over 30 years in hospitality and 17 years in the music industry, he's worked with some big global brands. A very sought-after speaker and co-host of the podcast Adventures in Business, Amani inspires music professionals to unlock creativity, take risk, and increase their business knowledge. His expertise has been featured in Forbes magazine, People magazine, NBC, and Yahoo Finance. Okay, enough from me. Over to the interview. Take note, everybody, and enjoy what Amani has to say. So, Amani, welcome to the Music Business Buddy. It's really, really good to have you here. It's nice to meet you. First and foremost, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much for having me, Johnny, and I'm excited to chat with you.
Good man. I'm glad you're here. Well, you know, there's so many strings to your bow, right? There's so many things. I don't know if you use that term in the US. It's a term we use here a lot in Britain, you know, having many strings to your bow. So, you know, you're a performer, you're a award-winning professor, an entrepreneur, a public speaker, an author. You're also a DJ and a champion for other DJs. Let's start by talking about that role. What does it mean to you to be a DJ, and how has it evolved for you in the years?
Well, being a DJ, that means I'm allowed to kind of activate people and speak to people through music. So that's exciting. And, you know, sometimes you could be the life of the party, but sometimes you're just in the background. So you have to know your role. And so DJing is a very sacred industry. It's a very sacred talent. So I accept the responsibility to keep it that way, but also keep it open so new people can learn. And yeah, so that's kind of how I answer that question. And the second part of your question was just, what was the second part of your question?
Kind of how it's evolved, really, I suppose, since you first started.
Yeah, so I started, 18 years ago, so it's very different now. I would say the barrier to entry is very, very low, so anyone can at least learn how to be a DJ. But what I tell everyone, including some of my students, is that, you can learn the basics about beat matching, maybe even scratching, doing stuff like that. But the art of reading a crowd is something that you acquire over time, and you can't rush that. So it's evolved where there's a low barrier to entry, but in order to be able to read the crowd and move a crowd and be able to test and sample and figure out what works, that happens over time through trying things, having them work, having them not work, failing, but continuing to keep trying.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Do you know, Amani, I've been reading all about you, over the last couple of days, and I saw one of the many things about you was about something you mentioned then, actually, which is about scratching. That's an art form that's always kind of intrigued me. Especially the hand-eye coordination of it, because if you don't have a visual representation of where a piece of audio is on a record, and you're using vinyl, for example, or even if you're using kind of a software controller, but you don't have a visual representation in front of you, it's all in the feel, right?
Yes, it's in your feel, it's in the ears. You might have a marker on the record if you're lucky, or you can set up your cue point, but it's really in the feel. You got to feel the music, the rhythm, and figure out what notes you want to kind of scratch over it. Turntablism is very, very sacred, very difficult, very sacred. And I'm not the best turntablist, but I can scratch here and there and do things. But that's a skill that you must continue to practice for years to get to the levels of some of the best people in the world. But it's a great skill, and it's an amazing tool to have in your tool belt.
Yeah. So do you ever come across any particular sounds or samples that you think, oh, that would sound good scratched?
Sometimes like nature, sounds of nature. It could be like a horn honking is also a good one. Maybe if you're lucky enough to get a Like if you can hear like a lion or something like that. So nature sounds are good. Sometimes even water. It just depends. It depends on how you're going to use it. So there's plenty of different sounds you can use. It just depends on how you want to use it.
Wow. I'm glad I asked you that because I didn't expect you to say that.
Yeah.
Life's full of surprises. Wow. May I ask you about one of the books that you wrote, The Perfect Storm?
Yes.
You raised a very, very interesting subject that really captured my imagination, and I'm sure that of many others as well. What happened to R&B groups? Now, I would not be foolish or small-minded enough to think that you can wrap all of the findings from a big research project like that into a short answer. But, you know, is there anything you can kind of summarize for us? Because there was a point in time in the early 2000s where R&B groups kind of just stopped and had been going for like 50 odd years. What did you come across in your research?
Yeah. So in the book, and I'll show you a copy. So the book right here is called The Quiet Storm. So The Quiet Storm, historical and cultural analysis of the power, passion, and pain of R&B groups. This is the cover. And so actually the title is The Quiet Storm, but it was an imperfect storm because there was 5 main things that happened. Hip hop went mainstream and record labels really chose to focus on hip hop and gave less focus and money and time to R&B groups. EDM also became bigger, and radio kind of shifted to playing more EDM style music and artists as well. Like if you remember back in the late 2000s, early 2010s, like Rihanna, Neo, Usher, all were making like EDM hits. So that was like the hot genre. I think particularly in the US, I'm not sure what it was like in the UK, there was this bill that passed called the Telecommunications Act of 96, where instead of radios being a little bit more homegrown based on the region they were at, they went to a playlisting format. So, you know, there are 3 main companies that bought up almost all the radio stations, and they went to playlisting. So if you're in like Chicago in the States, you're in LA, you're in DC, New York, you're basically going to hear the same songs in each city because they went to kind of more just the playlist. So the fact where most R&B groups would start in their cities, like Boyz II Men started in like Philly, TLC was like in Atlanta, you have Shy, another group started in DC, Destiny's Child was in Houston. These groups usually would start regionally and then get bigger because the local radio stations would promote them and feature them, and their songs would get hot in their regions and then grow nationally. But with playlisting, that took that all away. So that was another reason. Then you also had African-American media, whether it be like Jet Magazine, Essence Magazine, Ebony Magazine, and Vibe. They all kind of went out of publication. Essence is still in publication, but at its peak, combined, they had over 8,350,000 monthly subscribers. That went down to less than 1 million. So that was an issue there. And then we had shows over in the U.S. like the Arsenio Hall show, which was great for earned media. They have these groups on performing so the public could get them. So that's how they got to mainstream. You had the In Living Color, another popular kind of sketch comedy show that would feature R&B groups and hip hop a lot. At the end of their show, they went off the air and no shows replaced it. There's also this really popular show on cable TV called Video Soul on Black Entertainment Television, BET. That went away. So you keep losing all these kind of landmarks of shows that would promote these groups. And eventually you get to the mid 2000s. And once Destiny's Child all went solo, that was a wrap.
Interesting. Okay, so kind of de-regionalization became an issue. Okay.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it, yeah.
Interesting. Very interesting. I mean, groups in general, you know, we see less of them now, don't we?
Yeah, you do. I think money has to do with like a lot of groups, just the money, the choreography, even female groups, male groups, like they all kind of go. However, like K-pop is still doing extremely well with the group concept. So the group concept works. The question is, what is K-pop and what are they doing that maybe we can learn from? Because if you look at a K-pop video, a K-pop group, they are following the same playbook that R&B groups did. Blackpink looks very, very similar in how they have their videos, things like a TLC. You look at like BTS, when they were first starting, they kind of followed the format of like New Edition, particularly with their videos and some of their songs. So they're doing it right. What can we learn from them?
Well, that's an interesting question because it might be that they learned from us.
They did, yeah, for sure.
And of course, there's in Korea, especially Japan, perhaps the same as well. Maybe even China. There is a kind of culture of compliance in the music industry, whereby, okay, we don't even call it manufactured. We accept our roles and we go with it. And at some point in the Western world, we stopped doing that. which is good, right? Because it means that we have free speech and everyone can be doing all the things that they want to do. But it's also meant that groups have slowed down dramatically. Yeah. Maybe that's a factor. Yeah. But your research is fascinating. You're such a clever dude. I love it. It's great having you here.
Thank you.
I want to pick your brains about your education, because you studied at Howard University and then you did your master's in music business at Berkeley. That's pretty damn impressive. Well done.
Thank you.
How important has your education been to what you've gone on to do since?
I think education is important. I know that going to college kind of gets a bad rap a lot nowadays, but I think education is important. The more knowledge you have, the more opportunities you'll get, the more skills you'll be able to use in whatever work you're doing. And I'll even include, when I went to Scratch Academy, the DJ school, twice. That was kind of like getting your master's degree in DJing, a master's degree in music production. So when I went there, that really helped me with my DJ skills, growing the DJ business and just learning about different types of sets. So I'm always been a fan of education. I always will apply myself and do different programs. I think that in addition to the knowledge you're learning, you're opening yourself up to another network of people, because then you can tap into like alumni, you meet current students. So you're there with like-minded people. You can learn from them in addition to the classroom. I feel that by being at Berkeley, that's where my thesis project came from, which is where my second book came from. And so I'm just a fan of education. I think it's necessary, and it just depends on what you want to do. You don't have to go to college to get educated. You can join a community for education. You can go to college. You could take courses. But I do feel that you should always be learning. You should be a lifelong learner. That will make you more successful in the long run.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, so the approach to learning, regardless of where you're learning. That's a very, very good point. I mean, so speaking of learning, let's think about the teaching side of it, right? Because you are, a renowned professor in music business. What are some of the kind of the biggest challenges that your students face when learning about the business of music?
I think they are pretty shocked when they come in and learn that most of the artists that there's only really the top 1% of artists who make a lot of money. And the rest of the artists, they have to really, really hustle and grind to make it. And even so that's one thing that shocks them. Another thing that shocks them is that even some of the most famous of artists, most popular of artists, maybe don't know about the industry. So they make poor decisions. Maybe they give away their publishing. They give away some of their songwriting. They don't control their IP. And then we hear stories about how these artists want to get out of their contracts or they're not happy. And that shocks a lot of students because they think it's just an easy road. Once they sign with the label, it's easy. That's another thing. A lot of people feel that once an artist signs with a label, they've made it. It's done. The hard work is over. But really, it's even harder because then the label has more control. They can release the music. They can choose not to release the music. You kind of have to follow their instructions. You don't own your IP. So I think those three things really shock students because they're really used to seeing on the outside what goes on with artists. They have a nice video. They're at the award show. They're at the premiere. They hear their song on the radio. They think they get paid. I mean, even when I tell people that, particularly in the U.S., the people that get paid when a song is played on the radio is really the artist. It's not the artist. It's the songwriter and who owns the publishing. They get the money. Not the artist necessarily. And that's another shock. So as they start to learn things, they just become more and more surprised at really the music business is a business and it's, it can be cutthroat.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point because the US is undeniably the tiger of the music industry, right? It's always been that way because they're the most influential country in the world, right? Especially when it comes to pop culture, music, etc. But there's one flaw in that system in America, and you just touched upon it then, right? And that is neighbouring rights. Why artists and labels don't make money on their recordings on radio and stuff. I had a look into the history on that, and it seems to, unless I'm mistaken, so please correct me if I'm wrong on this, right? But it seems to date back to like the 60s, I think, or maybe even earlier, where record companies said to broadcasters, "Oh yeah, you don't pay us any royalties. Like what we get out of this is you playing our recordings, so don't worry about paying us." And then it's never changed since.
Yeah. I think I'm trying to remember the exact meeting. the Roman something. I have to remember the exact meeting, the Roman treaty, or I have to look it up and see. But we were not present. When I say we, I mean the USA, and neighborhood rights are just dismissed. And now the radio companies are so afraid of compensating artists because that's going to put them out of business because they built a business model based on not paying the songwriters and artists for being placed. So now they are very active in legislation against changing that because it's going to put them out of business. So we've set up kind of a broken system and we refuse to fix it. So it's very challenging. I think it's the Roman Treaty. Let's look it up here.
Yeah, actually, that does ring a bell, actually. Yeah, it's such a strange system. It always kind of makes me think, come on, this is America. Why haven't they fixed this yet? It's so surprising. But I guess if these things are steeped in time and people just get used to that system and then stop querying it, but then like in the US they started bringing in digital performance royalties, for like Cyrus and stuff like that. So there's a little bit of kind of compensation there on IP for people that played on records.
Yeah. But most people don't know about that. They don't know that you can apply to like a sound exchange and a song trust and get your digital performance royalties, whether it's on Sirius XM, Pandora, iHeartRadio. That's not really common knowledge. It's out there. People kind of know, but people don't really understand that too. And then we have the Mechanical Licensing Collective, which can help you also. So that's one thing I help is I kind of just show people, here are all the places you can earn your revenue if your music is played digitally for public. And so it's a lot of learning. I think it's called the Rome Treaty. It's like the Rome Convention in 1961 when we weren't present, and that's kind of where the law stems from. So if you look at that, that's 64 years ago. That's older than
crazy.
You and I. That's crazy. Yeah. It's ridiculous.
That's so odd, isn't it?
It's very odd. And so it's just a shame that it hasn't been fixed. But now you get into like politics and why the big companies don't want to change it because it could severely affect their balance sheet.
Yeah, that's a tough thing to try and fix, but it's just interesting because that is a very complex subject around the world. It's something that I've talked about on this podcast before to other people, and it's by the way, it's not like it works like clockwork around the rest of the world because it doesn't.
Right? Yeah, I've heard.
Yeah, it's like Australia, for example, have their own rules where they only collect on people that live there. They don't collect on overseas residents and stuff. It's like everyone's kind of got their own little isms with that. It's a strange one. But do you mentioned about network earlier? Have you noticed a pattern either in your career or with your students whereby they end up kind of working together with the people that they studied with and kind of go on and form relationships moving forward? Is that something you've witnessed?
I have witnessed that. I have, because I think for now, the last 2 or 3 years, we had a specific class on music business at the university that I created. And so I've noticed that some of the students who went through the first part of the program, so this is 2-3 years ago, are still kind of working together. They might be at different record labels or different organizations, but they still will collaborate. They'll send each other opportunities. Then I also get them to come back to visit the university and visit the class to tell about their career, and then they'll hire some of the students coming up. So it's growing like slowly but surely, so you can see the kind of collaboration and networking, because networking is probably the most important thing you can learn and practice outside of what you're learning in the textbook. It's all about who you know in the industry. That is the industry in itself, who you know and who knows you.
That's so true. Do you know, just talking about cultural differences there, I've always thought, again, that the Americans are so much better at that than we are. Like you're just so much more kind of so much cooler with the language. Like I remember many years ago being out in California and seeing, like here's an example of what I mean, right? So here we would say, you've got to put your seatbelt on, because otherwise you're going to get fined. That's what we'd say, right? And then you go to LA and you just see a sign saying, click it or ticket. And you go, oh, that's so much cooler. What a great way of saying it.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? And that's the kind of thing that it might not be networking, but actually it's closely linked to what I'm about to say next, right? Which is just this coolness of language that the Americans have. I remember going to a networking event out in LA. This was years ago. And, you know, going up to people and saying hello and blah, blah. And, you know, people go, oh, what do you do? And I go, oh, well, you know, I write songs. I'm a producer. I do a bit of pop. And they'd be like, what? And then I'd see other people. They just walk around with it. You know, Americans, I mean, walking around with like a business card in their hand, go, you know, I'm a composer, producer, bang, 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 bang. It's so much more punchy, you know, and I thought, wow, they're so much better at this than I am. So I think that's another edge.
Okay, we'll accept that. Yeah.
But okay, let me ask you this question, right? So What tips would you give to music creators now that are at the beginning of their careers? I'm sure there's like 1,000 tips you could give them, but what springs to mind that you think would be useful for them to know?
That's a great question. I would say first, I would say go invest and get the copy of this book right here. All you need to know about the music business, and this is the 11th edition by Donald Passman. This is like your ultimate textbook. You know, depending on what religion you are, I could say it's like the Bible, because that's kind of what they call it, the music industry Bible. Read that book, refer back to it frequently. I would say listen to as many podcasts as you can about the music business. I would also say it would be more beneficial for you to get and grow a group of 1,000 true fans than trying to get over 1 million followers. Of course, you want to grow your platforms, but if you can get 1,000 true fans that will buy $100 of your work a year, that will get you $100,000 a year. And from there, that can be your baseline, and then you can build on top of that. But I would say immediately capture as much video, capture as many email addresses and phone numbers as you can from a jump. Get yourself a lead magnet, whether it's you playing an acoustic version of a song, an exclusive song that's not been released. Maybe it's a PDF of like the top 10 tips you have about creating music. Get yourself a lead magnet so you can start to get these email addresses. And then you go start a YouTube. I know we get into TikTok and Instagram, and that's good. You can have those too, but YouTube is a good one because you can try to get monetized on there, and that can be like your home base. Also, make sure you have the website and the email address of your artist name. So if your name is like Leslie the Singer, then you need to have leslietheSinger.com. And then you need to have info@leslietheSinger.com for your email address, because that way labels and professionals will take you more seriously if you have all these things set up than if you're using a Gmail. You can use a Gmail at first, but very quickly get that domain name. It's only $12 or $13. Create the email addresses through Gmail and do that. I mean, that's just probably 7 tips right off the bat, but I think the one that's missed a lot is capturing the email addresses and the phone numbers. People are so worried about growing their followers, but you don't want to build your house on rented real estate, is kind of the saying, because you don't own those platforms. They can go away at any time, and a lot of times we get caught up in, whether it be TikTok, Instagram, Twitch, all these platforms, like own your own audience. That's so important. And if you can do that and add on top of it, grow to your 1,000 true fans, I think you'll have a slow but steady career that will grow and be more thorough, just more sustainable.
Yeah. Good advice. Do you know, it's interesting you say that as well about kind of data capture, because, you know, I've often thought over the years, you know, like, let's say you look at an artist and they've really, really grown, they've got some good editorial support, whatever, and they've got this big boost of spikes. And then I think, what if Spotify went down tomorrow? Like, what does that following look like then? And I think that's prompted a lot of people to think differently about that subject, which falls in line with what you're saying there. Also, what you're saying also falls in line with a lot of the ideology behind a lot of Web3 startups now, right? You know, kind of decentralization of platforms and kind of owning your own data and that kind of thing. It's it all falls in line with that model as well, that theory of the 1,000 true fans. So yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
I agree, because you have to own it. and then you can build on top of it from there, because, TikTok went down for like 12 or 13 hours in the US early in January, and people were like, oh my gosh, where am I going to go? Where am I going to go? Sometimes Twitter have issues with Twitter, so people go to Blue Sky. So you go into all these different platforms where you really need to just have your email address, your newsletter, just so you can communicate directly. And phone numbers, if you can get someone's phone number and be able to text your fans, that's gold.
Yeah, good. I remember hearing about that TikTok crash in the US. I remember actually thinking, just outside of music for a minute, I remember just thinking, oh, I bet that's quite peaceful.
It's very peaceful, yes. But people who are addicted, it wasn't peaceful for them, because they were scrambling, trying to figure out what else they were going to do. So yeah, that's funny.
Well, yeah, if that was the first thing that popped into my mind. Maybe I'm just showing my middle age there. But anyway, one final question I want to put to you, and it kind of builds upon the last question, right? Which is, if you could imagine this, Amani, right? Imagine that you were to bump into you 20 years ago, the you of you now and the you 20 years ago, and you put your arm around your younger self and you said, hey, do you know what? Don't worry, everything's going to be okay, but I need to tell you this. What would you say to yourself?
I would say 20 years ago, I would say like, DJing is a legitimate career, so don't worry about what other people think. I would say, like, being a professor and teaching, as much as you try to run from it, it's still going to come and appear in front of you. I would say that. And I would also say, like, build your email list on the business side. Just build your email list, and don't be afraid to write the book that you've been kind of thinking about, or that would move you, which is, I finally did that with The Quiet Storm. But I would really just say, continue to be very selective and diligent about who you spend your time with. Because, you're the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And if you choose the wrong people, that can set you back some years. And so those would be just some pieces of advice, I would say. I would also probably say, don't try not to worry as much. I would say so much, because we have the experience and the wisdom 20 years later of just seeing that. But those are some of the top things I would say for me personally. But really, it would be not really worrying about what people think. DJing is a legitimate career. And as much as you try to run and hide from teaching, don't run from it, because you're extremely talented at it. Yeah,
good for you. Well, I would say you listened, right? And you're a true gentleman. So I'm sure the younger version of yourself would look up and go, thanks, man. I appreciate that. Yeah. But if you're getting in a car, click it and ticket.
Yes. Click it and ticket. Yes. Don't be on your cell phone either. Yes.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. You're a top man. I really appreciate you. I appreciate what you being here with me today. I appreciate everything that you do for everybody that you interact with. You're a great guy, and good luck with all your projects, your ideas, those future books, everything else that you do. Just go and be you, and we appreciate you.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It was a great conversation.
Top man. It was really nice talking to Amani. Really, really nice guy, and has a very multi-dimensional view. He looks from various different angles, not only the kind of modern stuff, but also the traditional aspects of intellectual property and the business behind music. He was a great guest. I enjoyed talking to him. I hope you enjoyed listening. Until next time, everybody, may the force be with you.